I'm Shelby Novak from White River Valley Electric Cooperative in Branson, Missouri. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for Along Those Lines comes from Hendrix. Whether working on a distribution or transmission project, Hendrix has the products and services that NRECA members need. Let Hendrix solve your design challenges and simplify installation. Visit www.marvinutility.com to learn more.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your guest host, Erin Kelly, filling in for Scott Hoffman. This year's hurricane season could be especially challenging for electric co-ops and their members. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is predicting above normal hurricane activity in the Atlantic Basin, including up to 25 named storms, the highest ever predicted in NOAA's May forecast. We'll delve deeper into that forecast with Matt Rosencrans, lead hurricane outlook forecaster with NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, which is part of the National Weather Service. Later, we'll talk to Mike Heinen, general manager of Jeff Davis Electric Cooperative in Jennings, Louisiana, about his co-op's efforts to strengthen their system against hurricane damage. Welcome to the podcast, Matt. Thanks so much for coming on with us.
Good to be here, Erin.
As I mentioned, NOAA's forecasting up to 25 named storms, the highest ever predicted in your May outlook. What's happening this year to make that number so high?
Yeah, so that outlook is pretty high. The sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, they're 2 to 3 degrees above normal. And that. It doesn't sound like a lot, only 2 to 3 degrees, but when that's over the entire Atlantic, that's quite a bit. And then we're also looking at La Nina changing things in the Pacific. The sea surface temperature is there, and that changes the wind patterns on the globe, and that reduces wind shear in the Atlantic and is more favorable for more storms to form in the Atlantic as well. So those are two major factors that are really pointing us towards a very active season in the Atlantic Basin.
Hurricane season runs from June through November, but are there certain months that NOAA believes will have the most activity?
So any given year, August, September, October comprise about 90% of your tropical activity. And even August 20th and after is about 70% of your activity. It's really that late August through October period that things really ramp up. So we're still expecting the bulk of the activity during those months.
Obviously, the forecast is based on specific conditions happening this year, but are you seeing trends when it comes to hurricanes? Are they generally increasing in number or in strength?
We see cycles in the numbers of tropical storms and hurricanes. Those go up and down everywhere 25 to 40 years. We're in an active period now. We've been so since 1995. And that goes up and down with the general sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. There's records that go back 1,000 years that have those same cycles. That's a pretty stable cycle. But where we do see kind of trends is in the amount of rainfall from the storms. That is going up slightly every single year. So your freshwater flooding and inland flooding, even 500 miles away from the storm, is a little bit more intense. Sea level rise plus the more water is leading to more coastal flooding and higher surges along coastline. And there's even a little bit of a small trend in the winds that are associated with each one of these. So if a storm would have gotten to 40 miles per hour before or 45, now we're seeing it gets like 48 or 50 miles per hour, just a couple of miles per hour on each one of these storms. There's a slight upward trend in that as well.
What new tools does NOAA have this year for forecasting hurricanes?
Within the seasonal forecast team, we retrained our statistical models to look for analogs in a different way and to do our regressions and calculations in a different way, where we use the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic versus the global tropics, not just local to their own sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. So that kind of gives us a bit of finer scale. As the oceans warm overall, we can see a signal in the Atlantic. Is the Atlantic different from that overall warming? Is this different this year? And that's more significant. So that lets us kind of tease out that factor. We've also included a new model from the National Center for Atmospheric Research, their latest climate modeling that they use on that side. It's called CESM. And we now have 7 models that go into the seasonal forecast that way. And the day-to-day, the Hurricane Center has the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System version 2. That's going to be integrated into their operations this year. It's got a better ocean model. That math has all been refined this year. And last year, even the version 1 that wasn't as refined was still the best model that we had out through day 5. So now we're making that one even better.
How are you improving your communication system to get warnings out to the communities that need it most?
We used to issue the watches and warnings hurricane every 6 hours. Now, if the forecasters at the Hurricane Center decide that 2 hours into it, they'd like to just modify it or tweak it a little bit, they can send out an update. We have our routine stuff every 6 hours, but we can do intermediate or not routine updates now. So that way that information can get out there a little bit faster. Even a couple more hours to repair can really help people.
I know NOAA is big on encouraging people to be prepared for hurricanes and to be proactive about it. If you're an electric co-op in a rural area, what should you be doing to prepare?
I would be assessing tree structures. You don't want trees to come down and hit your lines because these storms bringing more rains can saturate your soils faster, and that can make your root structures more susceptible to tree blowdowns. If you are a co-op closer to the coastline, understanding how many people are really going to evacuate, how many people are not, because people that are not there are going to need restoration pretty quickly. And that's a very dangerous and tough activity to do post-storm. Some of the higher winds that we've noticed with some of these storms, just making sure that you are able to withstand that. But yeah, I really think a lot of the potential tree mitigation ahead of time can help a lot. And as much as you can, responding to the watches and warnings from the Hurricane Center and local forecast office to see when you might need mutual aid kind of stuff.
What if I'm an individual co-op consumer member? What should I be doing with my family to prepare?
You should really be going to ready.gov. That has a great checklist on there. That ready.gov checklist talks about knowing your risk. If you're at a household that is kind of a little further out and it's up on the side of a mountain, your wind risk and your mudslide risk is really high, but your flood risk is probably quite low. So understanding that, like if you are needing to get across a road that has a bridge that's kind of low, but it may flood out, make that decision a little bit earlier, get across that bridge and get back to where that one artery of escape is not cut off. That happened in Florida a couple of years ago where the one bridge going to the town was kind of cut off. We're stuck. So let's not have that happen. Get out when you can. Updating insurance policies. Some of those take 45 days to underwrite. So if you're not moving on that now, it won't even finish until July. Then that's right at the core of the hurricane season. Getting a lot of shelf-stable supplies. I know a lot of people that live a little bit further out are used to that. Well, just grab a little bit more if you can. Having a couple of gallons of water on hand, 1 gallon per person per day. You stage that now, but then you can refresh that just once a month. Go in, refresh that water supply. And then testing your generator now, making sure you understand how to work it. Don't run that generator in the garage. Make sure that exhaust is pointed away from the house. Even if you're running it close to the front of the garage, you really want to run it 10 feet away from your house. Generator deaths are too common in post-storm recovery.
Coastal communities are obviously used to having to prepare for hurricanes, but what about communities that are more inland, especially with the increased rainfall? Should they be doing more to get ready?
I encourage the communities to do more on their stormwater management at a community level, making sure the drains are cleared ahead of the season, making sure they analyze their system to be able to handle these rainfalls. Undertaking a big construction project now to enhance that might be a little too late, but we can start looking at this year after year and really enhancing that stormwater management capability. Then individuals, making sure your gutters are clear, making sure your property can drain out properly. If you think you might need sandbags, make sure you get them now. You don't want to be filling sandbags or trying to clear out gutters while the rain's already coming down. The number one cause of death in hurricanes is associated with the flooding, whether it's surge or inland flooding. Another major cause of death is after the storm and that recovery, people are running generators or heating elements inappropriately, right? Late in the season when a storm goes by, you can get cool afterwards. So people might run heating elements inside their house and carbon monoxide poisoning. If it's earlier in the season, and then they're trying to run a generator to fire up air conditioning, and those generator exhaust fumes come back into the home, and far too many people are injured or killed because of that. And that's preventable. We really want to minimize the preventable deaths.
Matt, these are really great tips. Is there anything else in the report that you think we should be highlighting for our listeners?
I think we should be highlighting ready.gov national level preparedness tips. Their state and county emergency managers, where they are great resources because they're going to have information really tailored. You might do something very different if you're in Eastern Kentucky versus, Northern Michigan, where you're going to get the remnants of that storm, those heavy rains into Michigan. But Eastern Kentucky's got that terrain that can really channel and flood. So there's different response actions they may ask you to take there. So just consult your county emergency manager's plans, and individuals can also let their county emergency managers know if they have a special case, such as needing battery-powered medical equipment. So really opening those lines of communication so we can really build this community to be resilient in the face of a hurricane.
Matt, thank you so much for all this really helpful information. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, and I hope everyone has a safe hurricane season.
Let's pause here for a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we'll talk to Mike Heinen, General Manager of Jeff Davis Electric Co-op in southern Louisiana, which has been hit hard by 4 major hurricanes in the past 19 years.
NRECA's Along Those Lines podcast is proudly supported by Hendrix. For over 70 years, Hendrix has been serving the electric utility industry, and they remain the leader in aerial covered conductor systems and polymer insulators. They're experienced in solving unique and common installation issues and deliver robust products that enable utilities to achieve outstanding system reliability in the most challenging environments. Whether you need design assistance, field support, or a customized solution, Hendrix is a partner you can count on.
I'm Ray Gorman from Pioneer Electric Cooperative in Ulysses, Kansas. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back, and welcome to the podcast, Mike. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate the interest.
Your co-op has really been walloped by fierce hurricanes in recent years, including Rita in 2005 and Laura in 2020. Can you tell us, please, about what kind of damage they've done to your system over the years?
Yes, I can. And you missed Ike in 2007 or 8, I forget one. So I've had 4 of them over the past years since 2005. Each one has completely devastated my cooperative and not a single meter turning after each one. The difference between Laura and Delta, they were a couple of weeks apart and they hit, you can say, almost identical, made an X right in my service territory between the two of them. But this time, Laura knocked down my transmission towers. The towers go over different waterways, and that meant I couldn't get to the coast with my transmission facilities as fast as I wanted to. So we had to think on the fly, which we did. And talking with FEMA because we have to get everything through FEMA, otherwise we couldn't do any of this. We had to put generators, big generators, Greco supplying those generators in 4 different spots along the coast to supply the businesses and the people that remain on the coast. And that's since August of 2020, and they're still operating today. So, and we have about a year and a half left before we can connect to a grid that's attached to firm grid power with our new transmission line that we're building.
You've estimated the total cost of all that damage at about $400 million. You're obviously a not-for-profit co-op. You're the smallest co-op in the state. How are you able to pay for the repairs in the aftermath of these disasters?
Yeah, $400 million is what we've been granted by FEMA to build this line. We're upgrading the system, hardening, and making it more resilient. As those are 2 key words that FEMA are using these days. So when we applied to get this grant, we told them that we're changing the system from a 69 and a 138 system and went to the coast to combine it to a 230 kV system using steel poles, and it's engineered for 165 mile an hour winds. So, and we'll have elevated substations, elevated to the 500-year floodplain plus 1 foot. So most of that, almost all of that is being paid for by FEMA. We have a few things such as land rights and different things such as connection to the IOU system that FEMA doesn't allow, but we'll cover those things and pay for it through with the help of CFC, our bank. So that's how we're going to do that. And hopefully there will be the very least amount of charges or none to our members in the long run when we get this finished.
That's great. I was going to actually ask you if it had affected your rates at all.
At this point, it has not affected our rates. We've been working with CFC, Cooperative Finance Corporation, and along with our contractor that we used after the storm, Royal Engineering, we've come up with ways, especially for the 230 line, they are prepaying the system to where they put money in the bank for us. We spend money to get materials. We send them the invoices. They pay for those invoices. And it's a rotating line of credit to where we don't have interest costs for the 230 system that is going in. So that's one savings that has never been done before. And they're actually doing it. And we're very surprised and pleased.
How far along are you, Mike, on strengthening your system at this point?
At this point, right after Hurricane Laura, we decided as we're strengthening, we're going to do two things immediately: change from a class 5 pole wooden pole for distribution system to a class 3, and use nothing but fiberglass cross arms on all of our distribution system. The construction for the transmission line, which is going to be 105 miles of transmission with underground going under waterways and different things along those lines, that construction should start June 15th. We're about 2 months behind, but considering everything that's going on over these years and all the permits and all the hoops you have to jump through, that's not bad. I'm going to take that as a win.
No, I think you should. Tell people a little bit about the grant process. If there are other co-ops out there, you couldn't apply for this directly, right? You had to go through your local government.
We went through local government, state government, and I recommend to anybody who is using FEMA to get and hire a FEMA specialist. We have a group, like I said, called Royal Engineering, along with Del Sol Consulting. Those two groups, when the storm first hit, they made sure we followed every single rule to the T, to where there'll be no questions when reimbursement comes about or when the audit comes about later on. And you have to have somebody with FEMA specialists and FEMA contacts to ask the right questions at the right time to make sure that you're taking full advantage of the programs that are coming through. Because one thing FEMA is famous for is this storm is not like the last storm, not like the next storm. Things change. You would think it would be very consistent, but it's not. It changes along the way, and they try to make changes for the better. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then they change again. So, and what's the best part about it is when you hire those consultants, FEMA is actually paying for it. It's based on the amount of money you're spending on your emergency work, and 5% of what we spend and doesn't even come close to what they're charging. So it's sort of like a free service, and I recommend that to anyone who's going through any kind of disaster recovery.
How long did the process take you in working with the local and state government to get the grant?
The grant is still there. It took about 3.5 years before we found out we have enough money to complete this project. But that's kind of long. But understand that during those times was the same times that COVID was going on, and price increases and supply chain problems were coming along at the same time. So we had a particular amount in mind, $250 million for the line. COVID hit, supply chain issues hit, price increases hit. So we had to keep going back to FEMA and saying, not our fault, but look at these things. The $250 million that we thought would build the whole line with no problem, now we'll build about half of it. And they listened very well, and we've come to an agreement in the end that we needed about $400 million to complete the project. So that's what's taken so long. And remember, all this time we have generators on the coast running, and those were very expensive at $4.5 million a month. But FEMA has said that they would pay for them until we can get this line up and running. But they have a deadline of June of 2025 that we're trying to accomplish. It is a race for time now.
When do you think you'll be completely finished with everything you're doing with your system?
I'm thinking probably September of 25 is what I'm hoping for. But we're trying to get the transmission line to these generation areas first, and then we'll complete the line and the project after that, after we get the generators stopped and send them on their way so we don't have to do that anymore.
I was just talking with a gentleman from NOAA, and they're predicting, as I'm sure you know, an above normal hurricane season this year. How worried are you about that?
Oh, I've learned through after Rita and after Laura and after a couple of small ones that scared us, and then Laura comes along, and then right after that, Delta comes along. I've learned that the good Lord's in control, not me. So I simply do not worry anymore. When you think about it, I have the best trained crew of anybody. We've been through more things than anybody ever. So we are ready to go at a moment's notice. And I have no doubt that I have the best employees in the world. I have the best administration in the world. And they know how to get it done. And they've done it a few times so far. So I'm really not worried at all. It only takes one bad one, so it can be the worst season in the world. And if it misses me, it's still good.
That's a good way to look at it. Even though you haven't, obviously you have a ways to go to strengthen your system completely with this grant that you got. Do you feel like you're better prepared with what you've been able to do so far than you've been in the past?
Oh, absolutely, especially since my first one. Hurricane Rita occurred a few weeks after Hurricane Katrina, and all of the resources were taken up in New Orleans, and I'm talking about everything. I had to go get poles in Canada for that one, and I didn't even see FEMA or know what FEMA was because I was a young general manager, CEO then. FEMA didn't come to my office till probably 3 months after Rita hit. And I had already made all kinds of decisions that were against FEMA rules. So I had to write, I don't know how many hundreds of letters to try and get everything passed through. But I did. It all ran through. But now I have professionals helping me and I have a great staff. So it's a lot better than it used to be. I'll tell you that.
You're right that people love to complain about FEMA, but you're saying great things. It sounds like you've had a good experience.
I'm going to quantify that is they're not fast, but without them, I wouldn't be here. So I'm sure not going to complain. FEMA has worked very well with us and a local state agency called GOSEP, which is the state of Louisiana. Louisiana has to get the money from the federal government, then turn it over to us to make sure that it's audited well or well documented. Because if there's a part that I get that I shouldn't get, the state has to pay it back. So the state makes sure that everything is done very correctly. Like they say, dot your I's, cross your T's, and make sure everything is done correctly to where when the money does flow and the audits take place, that everything is equal and you're done.
You are, unfortunately, I guess, a hurricane expert at this point. What kind of advice and lessons have you learned that you'd like to pass on to other co-ops?
Do not try and do it by yourself. I learned that very quickly in 2005 after Hurricane Rita, when there was no help. And I didn't know that you could go out and get help through specialists that deal with these things every day. Hurricane Laura, although it was the worst, absolute worst storm that this cooperative ever had, storm started here in 1957 with Hurricane Audrey. This is the first one that everybody remembers. I wasn't even born yet, but they had a lack of communications with the news media, and stations would go off at nighttime. There was no such thing as 24-hour stations. People barely had any communications at all, so they were caught off guard, and a lot of people got killed on that one. It was devastating. But at the end of the day, today's notifications and everything else that goes on, I really can't complain how everything goes because last two storms, they've had no deaths along the coast in the Cameron area. And I'm much better prepared knowing what to do and who to contact. I have contracts with the people to come in and help. So the biggest advice I have to someone is don't try and carry the load yourself. Use the people, and then prayer is a great thing as well.
That's great advice. How have your members come through all of this? Have you lost members moving away from the area or people rebuilt?
Like I said, I had so many storms that people moved north. Not after the first one, Rita, they came back. And then Ike in 2007 took their houses again. And then they said, I'm not doing that again. So they moved further north, but most of them still on my system to where it helped out. And then after Hurricane Laura, they're moving either further north. So it's been 5 years, and I'm just now getting back to the number of meters I had before Hurricane Laura hit. So it is a struggle. It's not like an ice storm where you put it back up and everything's right there to turn back on. This is a complete disruption of your entire system and your entire revenue stream when you still have the capital investments that you have to pay for through the bank that doesn't go away. So, and less revenue, less meters to get it from. So it is a struggle, but I must say the people you work with, CFC being one, FEMA, GOSEP, Federated, NRECA, you name all our associates that are a backbone, as they call Co-op Nation. And with their help and the help of all the linemen that come to help put your system back together, there is no better way, as far as I'm concerned, than the way we put things together to get it done.
What advice do you give to your co-op members about how to prepare?
Well, I tell you what, our co-op members are so used to it, I don't have to. They absolutely know what to do and when to do it. Like I said, during Hurricane Audrey in 57, they had 600 deaths. During Rita in 05, 0. During Ike, 0. And Laura and Delta, 0. So the membership knows exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And they're familiar with FEMA regulations as much as I am. So all I tell the members is stay away from downlines. You never know if they're going to be energized for whatever reason, backfeed through generators or backfeed through something that we don't know about. So that's the only advice I give them because they already know everything that they need to do.
Well, thanks so much, Mike, for sharing your experience. It's been really helpful, and I really hope that the hurricanes miss you this year.
I hope and pray also that they miss me too. Thank you for asking, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, Aaron.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, Hendrix. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Erin Kelly.
I'm Erin Steed from Farmers Electric Cooperative in Greenville, Texas. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.